Yeah, so it sounds like, if I may summarize there, it sounds like if you have a CRO that's very analytical, data-driven, like looks at the big picture, then there's probably an argument to be made for RevOps reporting into the CFO function, if that CFO leader is maybe less commercial, less go-to-market oriented. And then similarly, vice versa, if you have a CFO that is much more, call it a modern CFO versus a traditional CFO, then you could argue that RevOps would also benefit from reporting into the CRO. Is that a fair comment, or how do you guys see that?
I'm not 100% sure. I think there's also a little bit of personal preference in there. I think the reality is that if you're reporting to the CRO, and you can have someone that is a quasi VP of sales, or you can have someone that's a true CRO, you will be pulled way more into the day-to-day. It's like, the number that counts is the quarter end number. Because that's not just for commission purposes. This is how CROs and commercial leaders generally are being assessed, right? If you are reporting to the CFO, for him or her, it's more important to, hit longer term milestones. And if that comes at the expense of maybe a soft quarter here and there, I think that can be okay. It's also not his or her share that's being, taken away in that moment, right? So I think that's really the main difference. Is you have on the commercial leadership side, you will have inevitably a little bit more of a short-term focus, which can be empowering to some RevOps folks, can also be tiring. This is the firefighting approach basically. And on the flip side, on the finance side, you have a bit more of the long-term stuff. You're a bit detached from the operational world, I believe, but you get to work on, over time, gradually shifting LTV to CAC in the right direction and doing this through really cool, strategic measures and so forth. And I think that's why I'm also believing it's a little bit sometimes a personal preference for RevOps and the other way around.
And I would agree with that. I mean, I tend to agree with what you said in general. I think that's a good framework to start with, but there's personal preference. There's different styles. So there's not a right way to do it. I generally like Scott's approach of how, I shared it earlier. That makes sense to me coming from an FP&A perspective, but I'm not going to say that's the only way to do it. There's definitely discussion here, personal preference, team, where the business is at is all going to play a role. To me, much more important than who owns it is that you're collaborating and coordinating. That's the key thing. You can argue over who owns what, but if you don't have the right communication channels, it really doesn't matter. You're going to have problems either way.